Gurmaiga de Laskin Corlia, agus ta ebrin agus Charlie ar fod an state seo ag trahalt leis an géir cim costas moralta agus da dínig follint Chain Jones da dear Rinne Bernardo's gnús an duine a han jai tuis marí bank bia hon bia har a table dog good poesti agus a rare bottle in realtas in yet Malti hon codu dan the dini shop na dini ta híslis agus le YouTube ta costatí morgaste ag dul energy agus caihi and realtas griú. Tánaiste, before the current cost of living crisis, the level of child poverty in this state was utterly unacceptable. This week, the Taoiseach chose to dismiss a Bernardo survey on the worsening situation for workers and families. Bernardo's was in the House yesterday in Leinster House, where they set out for members the stark reality of what is happening at the coalface for families. In the report, they state very clearly that 1 in 10 parents that were surveyed have to use food banks over the past year, double the number in the previous year. They go on to say that 1 in 5 parents didn't have enough food at some point to feed their children in the last 12 months, and 29% of parents have skipped meals so that their children could have enough to eat. Now, I think those statistics are damning and are a shame on government policy. Many of these parents are in work, Tánaiste, earning their poverty, as it's now been called. So reflect on that stark reality for just a minute. Reflect on your government's, what has happened on your government's watch. Already saddled with out-of-control rents, soaring energy bills, high travel costs and the spectre of rising interest rates, it's an unforgivable situation that families go hungry because they can't afford to fill the shopping trolley at the end of the week. And that's the reality of the cost of living crisis. We all know that government can't do everything. We know that, but you can do much more. And that is why we need a comprehensive support package now. Last night, you voted against 2 proposals that are crucial. You voted against targeted and temporary mortgage interest relief for those that are seeing their mortgage costs rise by thousands of euro. Many of whom who had their mortgages sold off to vulture funds are now seeing interest being charged at the rate of 7.5%, with further hikes on the way next month. You voted against this sensible proposal, and you also voted against a spring bonus for those in receipt of social welfare payments, those in disability, our carers and our pensioners. A payment to support the most vulnerable, pension carers, lone parents and citizens with disability, those hardest hit by the cost of living crisis. Now, Minister, this proposal will go a long way to supporting those who are suffering at the sharp edge of the cost of living crisis. Any government serious about tackling financial hardship and poverty would have supported this proposal and implemented it. Your government choose not to. Both are urgently needed, Tánaiste, and we also know that there are measures that are set to expire at the end of this month. The rate of VAT on electricity and gas is set to rise despite households facing sky-high energy bills. Taxes on petrol and diesel are set to rise, increasing fuel prices at the pumps. And we must not forget that the government has taken no action, none whatsoever, to reduce the cost of home heating oil, despite it being the source of heating by 1/3 of Irish households to heat their homes. Now, Tánaiste, households are struggling. Many of them have already been pushed to the brink, despite all of what has happened in last year's budget. And they know that action is required. We know that action is required to protect them, to support them in the month ahead. Now, as I said yesterday, you decided to vote against 2 proposals that we put on the table in relation to mortgage interest relief, in relation to a spring bonus and other supports for the most vulnerable. So can I ask you on behalf of those individuals, for those who are seeing their mortgages increases, do you have any proposal that you're planning to bring forward that would support them in terms of their increased mortgage interest rates? And for those who are really suffering, for those who Bernardo's described in great details, who are visiting the food banks, who are going without meals, what do you propose to do, given that you have ruled out a spring bonus?
Well, our dúspáir ní ein team leis an tachte ó héh an méid takeíochta tá tugeag an rialtas do muintir na tíre seo go háirithe muintir atá ícham íseal. Níl aon áras ach suas le 8 billiún atá chur ar fáil ó hús gá bhíonna sa fé dó. 8 billiún chur ar fáil ag an rialtas. Can cáir agus takeíocht a chóirt a cosfuointe na tíre seo I ggóthaíocht an géirchéim costas marachtála. Níl aon áras go bhfuil agus go háire I rithean géirigh go raibh géirchéim uafás a gabhain agus ach dhéan an rialtas cinna darafach cá agus takeíocht de chóir do ghoine chun an brú a ísliú co fathers is Fairling. Could I say at the outset that I can recall on the last occasion when we introduced measures in terms of the cost of living and budgetary package last autumn. I think the Deputy would be humble enough to admit that the measures that we announced exceeded indeed the Deputy's own presentations at that time in terms of scale and range and breadth of proposals. The point I would make is that from the beginning of 2002, over 8 billion has been allocated on specific tax and expenditure measures to try and help people. And we are going through a cost of living crisis. Initially, coming out of COVID, there was an inflationary pressures because of supply chain, hugely exacerbated by the war in Ukraine. Everyone accepts that in terms of the energy crisis that unfolded. But the government made very significant and took very significant decisions. And in fact, the ESRI found that the once-off measures that we introduced as part of Budget 23 will insulate, it says, most households from rising energy prices this winter. The Fiscal Council reckoned that we got the balance right between providing relief to households and firms and making the not making the inflationary situation worse. And we understand, of course, that measures are due to expire at the end of this month. The government will be holding a series of meetings over the coming days to ensure there will not be a cliff edge and that we will continue to support families who are under pressure, continue to be under pressure because of the cost of living situation. But inflation appears to have peaked. It's now trending downwards, and that's something that has to be factored in. The budget in 2023 included a total package of 11 billion, and there was 4 billion of those were once off, and some of that is still feeding through. And you know, if you take a household in receipt of fuel allowance, for example, this winter, that household will receive a total benefit of almost €2,000, made up of 924 fuel allowance payment for the winter of 22-23, 400 fuel allowance lump sum, and €600 of electricity credits. And again, so that is a significant measure by any yardstick. We paid 8 separate cost of living lump sum payments throughout October, November, and December last year, including a €200 living alone allowance lump sum, €400 fuel allowance, 500 working family payment lump sum, €500 care support grant, €500 disability support grant, double child benefit payment, double welfare payment in October, a further double payment as part of this Christmas bonus, 25% reduction in childcare costs, putting €2,000 plus a year back in the pockets of parents, a cut in the USC so that workers on the minimum wage will now remain outside the top rates of USC, a new rent tax credit at €500 per year. All-in hospital patient charges will be abolished, and we've extended and will extend coverage for free GP care, and much more. Now, we will take decisions in the coming days to deal with the cliff edge issue to make sure we can continue to support people who are under pressure.
Taoiseach, prices are still rising, and as yourself and your cabinet colleagues and backbenchers slap yourselves on the back in relation to what you have done, I want you to again listen to the words of Bernardo's, not Sinn Féin, who are telling you what is happening out there in real life. They are saying that of those surveyed, 1 in 10 visited food banks. 1 in 5 didn't have enough food at some point last year, and nearly 1 in 3 skipped meals so that their children could eat. The pressure on food banks, the pressure on charities is growing. The prices are still continuing to go up. And what people need is further response to actually meet the needs of families. Now, we've put forward proposals. For example, there are many of these families who are queuing in food banks who own their own home. They're paying interest rates now of thousands of euros more. You've decided to say, we're doing nothing for you. I ask you a very simple question. Do you plan to do anything for those who are paying now 7 and 7.5% interest rates in terms of their mortgages? You've ruled out a spring bonus. You've ruled out other supports that we have put forward. What do you plan to do for those families that I have mentioned? 1 in 10 going to food banks, 1 in 5 didn't have enough food, 1 in 3 skipping meals so that their children could eat. Under your watch, under your leadership, that is what's happening in the real world.
Well, under our leadership, we waived free primary. We're bringing in free primary school books for all children next September. We've waived examination fees. We had a once-off reduction this year, academic year, third level of €1,000 and a further 500 next September. We've increased SUSI maintenance grants with a once-off double monthly payment before Christmas. We have a 20% public transport fare reduction. I'm answering your question because what you have done, Deputy, a clever device. We all talk about the Christmas bonus. Nice political clever device. Hi presto, spring bonus. Let's have a summer bonus. Let's have an autumn bonus. That's good politics, Deputy, but that's all it is. Clever politics, attempting to be clever, but I don't think it fools people. I think what's more important, and let's take mortgage interest relief. I mean, the people that you identified in your presentation actually would not benefit as much from a mortgage interest relief approach as you might think. Because you know from previous experience, it was the top 2 deciles did. If you're so committed, as you suggest, for those with the lowest income. So what we're going to come forward with is proposals to deal with people on low incomes, to target our resources to those on low incomes. And that's the measures that we're now discussing among the party leaders.